Thank you for coming to the final presentation of the LSSC program in 2013-2014 year. We would especially like to thank our client who is here today, Costa Rica, it's baby back, and our other clients who are Skyping in from Costa Rica, Ms. Emily Gazelle, and I can't believe the other name, but we welcome you as well. My name is Judy Young, and on behalf of LO10, I'd like to welcome you to our presentation of legal research and remedies for the Rich Coast Project. The Rich Coast Project is an organization that confronts the contentious land rights struggle occurring along Costa Rica's southern Caribbean coast, connecting legal experience and local experience to broad questions of international law and policy. The goal of this project is to use storytelling and creative advocacy to build a case for keeping the local people on their land and in their homes. Today marks the culmination of almost 7 months of researching, writing, collaboration, and investigation on a project to aid the Rich Coast Project. Their mission of keeping 50,000 families in their homes and on their land in defense against zoning laws became our mission as well. Our project began by researching the Talamancan people and then progressed with studying legal theories and relevant laws to retain the land they had called home for 186 years. Our law office soon realized that it was very hard to find information referring to or recognizing our clients in the news media, historical documents, and even in the country's own legal system. We wanted to reframe this issue by deeming the situation in Talamanca as newsworthy and important. To us, their struggle will always be a breaking story. Their rights, culture, and use of the land will always be a front-page issue. And it is our sincere hope that at the end of this presentation, it will feel that way to you as well. Without further ado, LO10 would like to sincerely and warmly welcome you to the Rich Coast. Welcome to Talamanca.
This study begins with a descriptive history and unique cultural aspects of the residents of Talamanca, a culture primarily Afro-Caribbeans and their interaction with their land. Included in this description is a history of the cultural isolation and racial discrimination experienced by the Talamancans as ethnic, racial, and linguistic minorities in Costa Rica. It is important to understand this history of discrimination and its role in creating distinct obstacles for the Talamancan people than for other Costa Ricans living in and around environmentally protected areas. In the 1800s, Talamanca was an unoccupied land with no indication of ownership. Afro-Caribbeans began to migrate and settle in the uninhabited area of Talamanca. Most notably was tortoise fisherman William Smith in 1828. Permanent Afro-Caribbean settlements in the Talamancan region started soon after with the creation of many self-sufficient farming, fishing, and trading communities. Talamancans survived by hunting sea turtles and utilized tortoise shells to make combs, buttons, and jewelry. They farmed cacao, plantains, and coconuts. In response to the increase of immigrants settling in Costa Rica, the national government passed the Law of Bases and Colonization, which prevented immigrants of Chinese and African descent from settling in Costa Rica.
Good afternoon. By 1915, the Talamancan coast was dotted with several small population centers, consisting of as many as 30 families each, and is now referred to as Cahuita, Puerto Viejo, Manzanillo, and Monkey Point. A census conducted by the Costa Rican government in 1927 recorded more than 18,000 Afro-Caribbeans living in Limon province. Hispanic Costa Ricans living in Limon were outnumbered by almost 50%, and soon after, there was a negative shift in sentiment towards the Afro-Caribbeans. The rise of hostility from the surrounding national population and the Costa Rican government soon followed. In 1933, over 500 citizens of Limon signed and submitted a letter of complaint to the National Assembly seeking administrative aid. The letter was published by the local newspaper and referred to the Afro-Caribbean immigrants as the Black Problem. In 1934, the companion law Decreto number 31 was passed instilling quotas that were more favorable to citizens and prohibited the employment of Afro-Caribbeans in the Pacific area plantations owned by the United Fruit Company. These materials demonstrate the long-held biases held by the known citizens and the parties in power.
A certain woman called me a one-punch man. I shouldn't be in society, calling myself a Calypsonian, but they kept it when I run me out the country, yes. She called me a one-punch man. I shouldn't be in society, calling myself a Calypsonian, but they kept it when I run me out the country. Me no know, massa, me no know what I've done this wicked woman. I only think me sweet calypso, but she said it when I run me out of the land. I only sing me sweet calypso, but she grab it when I run me out of the land. She went and told the authority, telling them I'm a foreigner. They come with gun and artillery, compelling me to show them my cellular. She went and told the authority, telling them I'm a foreigner. They came with gun and artillery, compelling me to show them my cellular. Me no know, massa, me no know.
The negative treatment and isolation of Afro
Shortly after, the Cortez presidential administration enforced the color ban across the country. Public restrooms, movie theaters, and the nation's only mental health facility all became racially segregated. The government also banned the passage of black workers to the Pacific region and disallowed travel by Afro-Caribbeans to the Central Valley of Costa Rica without proper documentation or approval. This negative treatment resulted in the Afro-Caribbean population being isolated from the rest of the country and often considered as an entity outside of the main population. This streak of isolation would continue until the end of the Civil War of 1948. During this revolutionary period, both opposing parties reached out to the known provinces' inhabitants for political support and advocacy. The Costa Rican Constitution then recognized the Afro-Caribbean population in 1948. This concludes the oral presentation portion of the history of the Tongan people and their struggles as a marginalized population. We will now show a video detailing the progression of the Tongan people in the 1940s through modernization and growth of the community. Thank you.
Caribbeans persisted until the cessation of the Civil War of 1948. The first opportunity for the Afro-Caribbeans to naturalize as Costa Rican citizens occurred during the presidential administration of 1948 in the post-revolutionary era. The current legal mechanism for acquiring citizenship in Costa Rica was also established by the 1948 Constitution. Between 1953 and 1958, dozens of new schools were opened in the Talamacan region by the Ministry of Public Education. Teachers were sent to the most remote areas of Talamaca in an attempt to strengthen the education in the Atlantic Zone. The development of Costa Rican conservation policy began a response to concerns generated because of rapid and massive deforestation throughout the 1960s and 70s. In 1979, Talamaca became a recognized tourist zone. Coincidentally, the Costa Rican Tourism Institute declared 4 beachfront areas between the coastal towns of Tuba Creek and Manzanillo as tourist zones. In the early 1980s, banana companies were buying land in Talamaca at an accelerated level. In the late 1980s, the United Fruit Company complained to the Costa Rican government that the fruit was badly damaged by the time it reached the port due to the lack of accessible roads. Desiring the economic benefits of the banana company, the Costa Rican government created roads. Chiquita Banana Company then complained to the Costa Rican government as well that they needed electricity for their plants so the workers could work at night. Again, responding to the economic pressure, the government finally brought electricity to the area. A Talamacan resident stressed, when there was no access to the area, Talamaca, the land was ours. Yet once the improvements to the region were conducted, including accessible roads and electricity, the Costa Rican government began to claim the land as government-owned. With this new recognition, as well as the addition of roads, electricity, and a fully structured constitutional court in the 1980s and 1990s, Talamaca began to fade away from the isolation and into the eye of the government.
Part of the things that the government must do is go to the people. They go to other places and help the people to do things. Why they couldn't come down here and help the people to get their things straightened out? It is because we were different. It is because our main language were English and they wanted to obligate us to talk only Spanish. It is because the color of the skin was different.
And now, here is Jackie Kelly, who will be discussing Regama and its effect on our client population in Talamaca.
Regama. I'm sure those of you new to issues of the Talamancan coast have probably never heard this word. What is it? Is it good or bad? More importantly, how does it affect the lives of the Talamancan residents? Regama is an acronym from the Spanish for Gandoca Manzanillo Wildlife Refuge. Many Talamancans live inside its borders.